I want to begin by just thanking Robert. He actually talk about serving. Robert's actually now over in children's ministry. He's going to be learning how to become a children's ministry teacher, but it's just a fantastic job. Just sitting there listening to him and just seeing how much when someone decides to grow, how much one can grow. Despite the obstacles or challenges they face in their life, they look at those, there's a book that is out there that says the obstacle is the way. And it's not running from it or blaming others, but embracing it and moving forward. And he just did a fantastic job. And I'm sorry that I got to come up here now and speak to you guys because I felt like I could have walked away after that. But you know, we're talking about the Great Banquet. And, you know, I think about how we're about to enter the holiday seasons. Okay, and for some, this is a time of great joy, and for others, this is a great challenge. I hope that, you know, wherever you're at in all this, that we can remember both sides of the coin here, and enjoy what is there with us, and yet at the same time we mourn what is not there with us, and so to remember that with one another. And I think about this banquet and enjoying and feasting and celebrating. And life doesn't always feel like a celebration, and that's what we really pull out of Robert's story. But we can get caught up in just these moments and never get out of them. And when we read this passage and parable, we realize that life is more than just these moments. It's a collective thing. It's all of life. And with God, it's not just all of life that as we know it, it's all of eternity that matters. And really, this is a passage really speaking on the long term. And so I want to ask an opening question here, is that just to maybe lighten it up a little bit, it's the holidays. It's coming up. Easter, we got not Easter yet. Harbor Day. I don't know what. We're going to have to erase that part from the video. None of my mistakes up there, okay? We got Halloween coming up, right? I'm a big Halloween fan because that's the day my daughter was born. She's a Halloween baby, okay? And she's still my baby, even though she's a teenager. And I'm just going to take a moment to embarrass her. Okay? And so it's amazing. It's an great, incredible holiday, right? We got Thanksgiving, and then we got Christmas, and we have New Year's. And speaking of banquets, what is your favorite part of those things as far as food goes, right? Is it the dessert? Is it the food? What is it? And I'd like to hear your part. And if you say food or dessert, what dessert? Okay? What is your favorite? All right? For me, anything chocolate is a favorite, okay? Just something about it just rubs me the right way. It's just awesome, okay? Anybody? Favorite dish? Sweet potato biscuits. That is a first. That's Bucks County right there, guys. That is all Bucks County. Gary Bucks County Byrd, okay? I don't know if you know the Byrds. They're from the North region. They're out here hanging out with Michelle and I today. So, welcome. In fact, Pontus, you guys still in the North region? Or did you go to Habertown? Still in the North? You guys, the Ponters. Pointers, sorry. Yeah, okay. So, you know, everybody's coming. We had some 5 girls sleep over our house last night. So, naturally, I hung out in the garage. So... But go ahead. Cranberry sauce, that's good. Macaroni and cheese. You can have that any time of the day, year. Deep fried turkey. Yeah. Cheesecake and cherry pie all on the same plate. Maybe over mashed potatoes. I don't know. And that's not even Bucks County, all right? It sounds like Cherry Hill stuff. No, really? I never expected this craziness. Go ahead. Gumbo? Seafood gumbo. For holidays, that's a down south stuff right there, right? Michelle? Chocolate cream pie, right? What? Brussels sprouts. I don't know. We got to move on. All right, go ahead. Go ahead. Collard greens. Corn casserole. All right. Go ahead. Cinnamon roll. I'm glad somebody came through, man. I was a little worried about this group. I was like, I don't think I relate with anybody here, man. Lasagna, all right? Growing up in Italian, you always had, it's Christmas, you had seven dishes, right? So lasagna was always one of them. Christmas Eve, that's when we had it, right? Only when my grandmother made it. No one else did that. Prime rib roast, but that's not bad either. I haven't had it, but I like the sound of it. So, yeah, oh, you're just doing your hair? Oh. All right, Michelle. Spinach artichoke dip. Okay, that's okay, yeah? Yours is Thanksgiving? Eating happy? Yeah. And you enjoy watching everybody enjoying what you cook. And I hope one day to be invited to enjoy your cooking. So, cool. You can see that we're pretty diverse in all this. In fact, there was some stuff I heard that I hope I can forget. You know. But we're so fortunate, and it's something about when we all come together as a family or friends and relatives, and sometimes that could be a mixed bag of nuts, right? But most of it would come in, just like it was said here, that just to enjoy, to watch everybody, to enjoy this time together. And it's an incredible feast, right? And there's something about eating that brings happiness, right? In fact, in the book of Luke, the Gospel of Luke, 32 times it talks about Jesus eating or drinking or at a banquet with someone, right? 32 times. So Jesus took advantage of this, okay? And he's often invited. Sometimes he invited himself, like Zacchaeus. Come down, I'm coming to your house. Has anybody ever tried that, right? We should try it. And let me know how it goes, right? I know you guys are going to start asking me, can I come to your house, right? Let me make sure my wife is okay with that. So that's all I ask. So, but you're more than welcome to come. But, we're looking at the Great Banquet, and, I know we'll spend most of our time looking at verses 15 through 24, but I just want to read prior to it a little bit, because I think it really sets up what we're talking about here. And I know this is part 2, and we're going to end it today, okay? I had this grand plan, doing it for weeks on, weeks out, and I realized, oh my gosh, we got Thanksgiving coming up, we got Christmas coming up. There's some things I want to talk about with that. So you might look at your sheet of paper and see 6 points. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on some of those points. We're just going to read through the scriptures and just look at it and talk about what's being said here. And then, John Gaines always says, I always feel like when you do that, you're setting me up. And I am. The zinger will come at the end. All right? How do you feel now? Verse 1, chapter 14. One Sabbath, when Jesus went to eat in the house of a prominent Pharisee who was being carefully watched. You see, the Pharisees, you look at these outer skirt areas, they really kind of were the leading authorities in that area. And they loved their position. They loved their position of influence in society, their position of influence over the religious matters, okay? They were very wealthy, they were very well connected, and they loved these things. And here comes Jesus, and he's sort of now breaking into this, right? Not that he was getting rich, but he was influencing society. And you got a group of people that when you have influence, and then some outsider comes on in and begins to make strides in that area, breaking your influence, you're not very liked often, or you're met with skepticism. And this is where Jesus is at. They come on in, and they're like, let's get this guy in, and they have a careful watch on him. In fact, we're going to see he actually gets set up, because the Sabbath was so important to them. And they held this to a legalistic standard. And so he continues on. He says, there in front of him was a man suffering from abnormal swelling of his body, right? In fact, all the translations said dropsy, so he retained water, and it was a lot of painful. Now, a guy like this normally would never be invited to this kind of gathering, because these Pharisees, they're bringing people in that really only benefits themselves, right? So there's this idea that they are just self-serving. And so even this guy coming on in is for their own self-interest. And they want to catch Jesus in breaking what they believe is the law. And so Jesus, not minding breaking a few rules, that is legalistic rules, not made by man, not God, Jesus asked the Pharisees and experts of the law, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not? But they remained silent. So taking hold of the man, he healed him and sent him on his way. Then he asked them, if one of you has a child or an ox that falls into a well on the Sabbath day, will you not immediately pull it out? Right? Will you not help those who you care about the most? And as far as that ox goes, that self-serves them. Of course, they're going to make sure that's taken care of, right? So the people you care about the most, and the things that you care about the most, you're going to make sure those are taken care of. But the ones that you're not so connected with, the things that are not that important, you hold to a standard that you yourself don't hold to. And so he calls them out on it. And they had nothing to say, it says. And when he noticed how guests picked the places of honor at the table, he told them this parable. And when someone invites you to a wedding feast, do not take the place of honor, for a person more distinguished than you may have been invited. If so, the host who invited both of you will come and say to you, give this person your seat. Then, humiliated, you will have to take the least important place. It's like having a wedding, right? You have your wedding, the bride and the groom, the new married couple sits up front. That's the place of honor. And what's really next to them is usually the bridesmaids and the groomsmen, right? That's their place of honor. So it's sort of like someone coming up and sitting in their spot. That's a no-no, right? You're going to get bounced, right? And so you're going to go to the next table. And then you have the family members or close friends, and usually that's how it's set up. And in this situation, what we have is self-promoting people. People who they go and they sit in those places that don't belong to them. And so he's talking to them, he's talking about this, he's seen this, and he's going, man, not all of these folks, the house and the party is about self-serving. It's about meeting their special needs and interests. You got people even coming in who are self-promoting, right? They're trying to get into a position. And he looks at them, and he's saying, why are you doing this? And he continues on, but when you're invited, take the lowest place, so that when the host comes, he will say to you, friend, move up to a better place. Then you will be honored in the presence of all the guests. And here is what the parable of the banquet is really all about. For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. And so the way that we receive this kingdom, the way we receive this relationship with God is through humility. Not self-centeredness, not self-interest, not self-promotion. But it's about walking humbly before God and man. And then Jesus said to the host, when you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends, right? Your brothers or sisters, your relatives, or rich neighbors. If you do, they may invite you back, and so you will be repaid. And he's saying that most of our relationships are based on what we can get out of. Right? Think about this. And we're all guilty of this, right? You get with people and you surround your people who are like-minded because you get the most out of that. And now he's challenging us not to be that way, or solely that way at least, right? But he goes on and he says, but when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed. And although they cannot repay you, you will be repaid at the resurrection of righteousness. So he's saying all that you have and all that you can do, yes, don't use it just and your relationships just about what can benefit you, but look how you can give to those who actually can't give back to you. And this is super challenging because I was reading and I was like, I don't know if I actually fully lived this out at this moment. I do believe I had to a certain degree, I do. But I don't. I see the way Jesus lived, and I go, I'm not that. Because when you look at Christ, when you look at God, he constantly giving, but what can we really give God? What can we give God that he can't do for himself? Even when David wanted to build the temple, he's like, what house can hold me? Right? It's like, you can build this temple, go ahead, but what can hold me? Right? Meaning there's nothing that we do that God can't do for himself, but what God desires still is our relationship. And he's looking at these people, he says, these people can't repay you. Have them a part of your life. The people that don't give you anything back, we need to have a part of our life. And when you look at these people, you're always giving to them, right? Now, he's not telling us you have people in our life that control us, right? They give so much that they own you. You have to give so much they kind of own you, right? They're so needy, right? But what he's talking about is don't just give to people who give back, give to people who can't give back. And he's saying if we live that way, God will give back to us. So I love this because God teaches us that, man, if you take care of these things that I care about, I'm going to make sure that I take care of the things you care about. And so he gives back to us. And so in that context, God rewards us when we give to people who can't give back to us. And so we continue to read. And I know last week, the point I made was God has feelings like us, right? And so just kind of a recap there, that God feels what we feel, that our emotions aren't unique to us, they're actually inherited by God, right? If we feel hurt, God feels hurt. If we feel joy, because God feels joy, and God is love, so we can feel love, right? And the list goes on and on, even jealousy and anger, right? Frustration, all these things are aspects, because we are made in the image of God, we possess some of these aspects. And so we looked at that, okay? And so we're going to continue on in the parable. So, number 2, God has a plan for my life. God has a plan for my life. You know, let's read this passage, and I'm just going to talk about this really quick. When one of those at the table with him heard this, he said to Jesus, "Blessed is the one who will eat and feast in the kingdom of God." Right? You ever have one of those people when there's a tense moment in a conversation, and then that person wants to lighten the load a little bit, like, oh, all that matters is that we all just get along. And you're like, no, That's not what I'm feeling right now, okay? Right? They always want to be, it's sort of like it's this feast, and Jesus is saying, man, stop being self-serving, right? And make sure that you take care of people, and bright these kind of people. And the guy's like, yeah. Everything, and man, blesses everyone who eats in the kingdom of God. He's like, no, you don't get it. Don't minimize this, right? And he goes, a certain man, he begins another parable, was preparing a great banquet and invited many guests. See, God has a plan. And in his plan, he's like, I'm preparing. He's thinking about these things. He's preparing for these things, right? He's inviting people to it, right? God is not winging things. This feast is not just something that God just on the whim decided to do. It's from the very beginning, God has had a plan for all of mankind. And that plan is manifested and shown clearly through the life of Jesus, the life and teachings of Jesus. And Jesus is beginning to let them know this in this parable. That is, this banquet, this feast, this certain man, eventually in the end, we'll see that that certain man is Jesus himself. And he's out here and he has a plan for our life. And so he continues on. And God's plan, this banquet, always was to fill his house. From the very beginning, God wanted a big family. A big family. And all of us are part of that. When Michelle and I got engaged just a few years back, 18 and a half, almost 19 years now, right? I remember sitting in Starbucks, because if you're going to be connected to Michelle, you have to be connected to Starbucks. And I remember us talking, because we never talked about it. Here we are, we just get engaged, and we say, how many children do you want? How big of a family do you want to have? And both of us wanted 3. It was perfect. All right? 3. Until we had our first 2 kids. And then the third one was coming. Michelle was 6 months, and one night we stopped and looked at each other and go, what are we thinking? Right? We're so overwhelmed with 2 little kids. Now we got a third one coming, and Christian's worth it sometimes. And no, I'm just joking, right? But it's amazing having a family. And it's amazing to have the family of God. You know, last night when I came out of the man cave, the garage, where I was tinkering around with stuff, and I came and I saw my daughter and all of the friends and from the North region, and they were all just sitting, giggling, laughing, and screaming and doing their thing. I stopped and looked and said, this is what I always dreamed of. This is what I wanted for my kids, to have this relationship within the family of Christ. And I was just so excited that I went up to my room, shut the door, and thought, that's awesome. From a distance. Right? But God's always had a plan. And sometimes, going back to Robert's communion, sometimes that plan is that some have to sacrifice. And sometimes in that plan, some are the sacrifice. And other times, we're the beneficiary. In fact, we're always the beneficiary in Christ. But some have to sacrifice, some will benefit, and some will be the sacrifice. And we all will play that role one time or another. But it's all about fulfilling his plan. And so when we're going through things in life, whatever they may be, good or bad, you realize, I am living out God's plan for me. And so then we continue on. And God doesn't accept your excuses either. Right? God doesn't accept, the only people who accept our excuses are ourselves. Let's be honest, right? We're full of excuses. You've heard it said, everyone has excuses like everyone has belly buttons, right? But Adam and Eve didn't have a belly button. They still had excuses. So to have excuses is divine. It's mankind, I'm saying, right? It's part of our nature. We're full of excuses. Why? why something's happening, why something's not happening, why we can't do some things. But here's an excuse that these folks begin to make, and it says, but they all alike began to make excuses. And the first said, I have just bought a field, and I must, right? I must go and see it. Even though he bought it, he owns it, he could have seen it any time. Please excuse me. Another said, I have just bought 5 yoke of oxen, right? And I'm on my way to try them out. No one buys things without trying them out. We talked about that last week. But again, if he owns it, he can try it out another day. And please excuse me, still another, I just got married, so I can't come. He doesn't even say, excuse me, I ain't coming. He's blaming his wife. Just like Adam blamed Eve, okay? That's what's going on. I can't come, it's my wife. What does she have to do with it? Why can't she come to the banquet, right? See, these banquets are rare and few in between. And so when they happen at this time, it's a huge deal. Everyone is waiting for this to happen. They're excited about it. There's murmurs, there's talks, there's discussions, there's visions. People start talking about what they're going to do and what they're going to, where they hear, what food's going to be there and how much you're going to eat. I mean, it's just a great time. And these guys, they said yes, and then they turn their backs and say no. Why? They say, no, I have material things I got to deal with. I have relational things that I have to deal with. In essence, I have no needs and I have no desires. And so I don't care about your banquet. And what we don't understand today, because it's common for us to have to back out of things, but at this time, at this magnitude, what this actually was a declaration is, I don't like you. I don't want to have this relationship with you, so I'm not coming. Do you understand? And this is what's going on. His audience understands that that is the mindset. He doesn't have to go in and say those words. They understand by rejecting that invitation that it's claiming, I really don't care to come to your party. I don't want to come to your party. The excuses are just out there. We make excuses, but in the end, we got to realize when we really want something, we make it happen. It's just excuses. What we're really saying is, I don't care. And in this situation, they don't want to have the relationship. They don't like that certain person. You know, Jesus says, if they hate me, they're going to hate you. If you're a follower of Jesus, listen, there's people who are not going to like you. And as followers, we have to get over it. We should be so perplexing to our society because they see the way we live, they see our deeds, they see our love, they see our acceptance, but yes, they hear our standard, and they should say, I like what I see, but I can't stand what I hear. And the crowds were drawn to Jesus. The religious leaders were drawn to Jesus, right? The secular leaders were drawn to Jesus. He fascinated them. They wanted to see him. They come long distance to hear him. But they didn't like the message, so they killed him. It wasn't the things he did, it's the things he said that got him in trouble. They loved the things he did. They just didn't like the things he said. But Jesus paid no attention to what man thought about him. And as followers of Christ, we have to realize that the things we stand for and the things we say, people are not going to like us. But let us not be liked because of what we say, not because of what we do. And the church has gotten a bad rap because of its hypocrisy. It wasn't the message, it was the life. But that's why the scriptures tell us, keep our life and doctrine together and persevere in them, so we'll save both ourselves and those who hear our message. But we look at this scenario, we have to get over it. If you want to be a faithful follower of Christ, you're not going to be liked for the things you say, the things that we stand against in society. Yet, let it be said because of our teaching, not because of the way we live and love people, or lack of love. 1 Corinthians 1:18. You can hold your spot, and I should have told you that earlier. You already moved on, right? We're going to go back to Luke 14. For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved is the power of God. Verse 23, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and foolishness to Gentiles. A stumbling block because emotionally they couldn't connect with this. It didn't fit in with their tradition. And for the Greeks, it made no sense. We live in a world where it doesn't feel right or it makes no sense. And so the cross of Christ is nothing more than foolishness, and those who live it and teach it are foolish. They don't understand it, nor does it feel right to them. So, this is it. We got to accept that we're not going to be lights and make no excuses for it. I move on. I told you, I guess I was a little long there. Jeez. All right? But he doesn't accept the excuse. He says, the servant came back and reported this to his master, and then the owner of the house became angry, right? Did not accept it. He understood the insult to it. God is full of grace and mercy. God is full of grace and mercy. I want us to understand, I talked a little bit about this last week. I'm not going to go into great detail about it, but it talks about, and order his servant, right? Continuing this as he's angry. Then he goes and orders his servant, go out quickly into the streets and alleys of the town, bring in the poor, the crippled, the blind, and the lame. All those that have been pushed aside, God is full of grace on them. All those who are struggling, all those who are crippled, all those who are blind, all those who have less, all those that society kind of passes by, those are the ones that God cares about. And he's full of grace and mercy on them, as he is with anyone. It rains on the righteous and the wicked, right? God is full of grace and mercy. He doesn't accept our excuses. He does have a plan for our life. He does feel these things, but he is also full of grace and mercy. Somehow God miraculously, in his anger or frustration, is able to turn that in suffering and pain and anger and frustration and make it grace and mercy. It's like what Robert was saying. You know, Robert was about to have a conversation with his dad to say, I forgive you. Though he's hurt and angry, he's finding ways to dig in and be gracious towards his father. That doesn't mean he's going to entrust his life to his father again, but he's not going to have his father have control over him anymore, and he's going to show grace and mercy and forgiveness. The call for us as followers is to spend time with people that are not like you. I live my weeks that way. Spending time with people who don't hold the same views as me. Spiritually, in parenting, politically, it goes on, okay? But to show grace and that mercy and to understand and see their perspective and still care for them is a tough challenge. But this is the way our God lives, because in one time or another, we were all, in some shape or form, beat up. It continues. God expects a full house. God expects a full house. Sir, the servant said, what you ordered has been done. But there's still room. Let me ask you, do you feel like this man or these servants have failed because they didn't get the full house? How many feel like he's failed? They have failed. I take that as no one feels like they failed, right? You know what's successful evangelism? if you're able just to share with Jesus who Jesus is and what he has to offer. What they do with that is up to them. You're successful if you got to preach the cross. If you got to share with them the message of the gospel. If they come or not, it's not up to you. God makes that grow. But you're seed planters and waterers. You're successful if you just shared that gospel. I know sometimes we feel because no one came out or no one's studying with you that you feel like this doesn't work. That's not what the Bible teaches. And that's not the example Jesus or the apostles set. What is successful is that you invited them out to share in this feast. And he talks about go out to the roads and country lanes and compel them to come in. Now, it's an interesting word, right? Compel. And we think, well, doesn't that mean they have to be in? That's not what it means. See, culturally, if you were invited to something as great as this, or you gave a gift to somebody at that time, it's expected that you give a gift back. This is just not even just Eastern culture, Roman culture, Greek culture. Whenever there was something like this that somebody has given to you like in this manner, the expectation culturally is that you also bring a gift to them. Okay? And that word compel, basically what he's saying is so what happens is these people who are lame, crippled, blind, they don't have anything. So they're not coming because they feel like I have nothing to offer. So I'm not going to show up. And so when he called them to go out there and let them know, you don't need to have anything. You don't need to bring anything. I don't need no gift from you. I just need you to come. I have it all provided. I have it all taken care of. I just want you to come and enjoy the feast. Don't worry. Bring yourself just as you are. That's what he means by compel. Let them know that the way you are is acceptable. The mess that you're in is okay. The brokenness you're in is okay. You don't need to add anything to the banquet. I have it all taken care of. And that is the message he gives everyone. You just come as you are. He's got it all taken care of. Jesus didn't go to the cross and die and then leave portions out. He didn't say, all right, I took care of this much, you got to take care of that much. Right? He just says, now come. Come celebrate this life with me. Let's enjoy it now. And he reads as it continues on, so that my house will be full. That's what it's all about. He wants a full house. And those who are exalting themselves, those who are prideful, self-focused, self-centered, self-promoting, they're the ones who miss out on enjoying the feast. And I have found over time, even disciples of Jesus Christ coming in with humility lose that humility, begin to exalt themselves, and they just don't enjoy God's house. They're not living life full of joy, but they see everything wrong with the kingdom. They look at it as us versus them kind of a people, right? The leadership this, right? Or the church this. Those are the terms that they use. And we don't forget about the house of God. The scriptures tell us it is his bride. Right? When I was standing at the altar, and many of you can remember this, right? You're standing at the altar, and I remember we were in a park, and Michelle started walking in. And she was looking at me, and I was looking at her, and it was amazing. And I know there was other people there, but all I could see is her. And it was just awesome. And you know what I wasn't doing? I wasn't going, well, why'd she pick that dress? Oh, she knows I don't like her hair like that. Man, how long did it take to get down that aisle, girl? I wasn't doing that. Oh, I was thinking about how awesome is this woman I'm about to marry. And how excited I was about the future we were going to have together. And that's all that was going through my mind at that time. And when Jesus looks at his community of believers, that's how he's looking at us. How awesome are my people. They are my treasured possession. How beautiful and radiant they look before my God. And these are his words that he uses. Read Ephesians 5:20-24. Without a stain, without a wrinkle, without a blemish. That's how God sees his community. I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about us collectively. Can you imagine if God treated us and looked at us and talked about us the way some of us talk about the church? This is his house. This is his bride. And he treasures it and he goes, I want it full. You don't want less. He doesn't want you running out the door. When you look at it, he wants more and more to come and celebrate it. This is the best thing in town. We don't even realize it. Man, the relationships I have, we've been here 2 years. And I could just go list of all the folks I got to hang out and build a relationship with, have fun with. I love harassing Cecil. Is he in here? Where is he? He ran. He's downstairs with the kids, right? A Cowboys fan, right? And he loves giving it back, right? I love to spend Friday mornings with John Gaines and just talk about everything and anything. Look at John. Look how good looking he is, right? Look at that. But where would these two people hang out on Friday mornings in the world? But there we are at Berlin Diner, right? John and all his pancakes. Me and my eggs and toast, just talking about anything, right? And everything. And I get to learn from John and his life and his experience. And he gets to listen to me. And it's a humility that is there. We learn from each other. I'm going to be 44. John's a few years older. I'm not going to go there, John. I just want to, right? And here we are, two men listening and learning from each other, right? I love the little text I get from Bob about the books he's read, right? It's just one thing. I love having Raven coming over and eating dinner with us every week, right? And my kids love it. It just, the list goes on and on. There's so many of you I can spend time with. And I think, wow, I'm so fortunate to have this house to be a part of. And I look around and I'm sad that so many don't have what I have. But I think sometimes families are a mess, right? But the parents still love their kids anyway, right? And you know what? Sometimes parents are a mess, and the kids still love their parents anyway, even if they're hurt by them. That's one of the most important relationships they want to have, right? And we got to realize that we got something good here. It ain't perfect in our eyes, but it is in God's eyes. And the house, he keeps saying, go further out and bring more in. God just doesn't want us just to be us, insular, and just think about only our relationships. He wants us to continue to include it and make it bigger. And so he's calling us to do so. And those we know, it says, serve the servant, right? We read that. We talked about these things, right? Your relationship with God is directly connected to your relationship with one another. The head, Christ, the body of church. The misbelief that it's unscriptural but does exist is to think that you can have a dynamic relationship with God apart from God's people. Actually, it's not biblically possible. Your connection to one another is your direct connection to the head and vice versa. Okay? We talked about this ceremony, how the Kazaz ceremony in the prodigal son, how the son just didn't offend the father, he offended the village, right? The whole community was hurt and offended and mad at what the son did. Because the father wants to give us his house, be a part of his house, right? And number 6, even God has his limits. And I'm going to end with this. God has his limits too, or he has his standards, if you want to use that term, okay? Whatever you feel more comfortable, fill in the blanks. But he says, I tell you, not one of those who were invited will get a taste of my banquet. The invitation's there. It's up for us to come on in. It's up for us, as members of his house, to be members of his house, to be his workers, his servants, right? To celebrate and enjoy that banquet. It's up for us, as members of his house, to bring as many as possible. Don't forget the outcast. Don't forget those who are less fortunate than us. Don't shy away from them because they're different or unique, or you're embarrassed by them, or you don't know how to act around them. Begin to learn how to do those things, right? Remember that God, he's not going to accept our excuses in these matters. He expects us to do those things. Remember, he has a plan and that he has feelings. This is all part of the banquet. And so I leave you with these application thoughts. And then the song leaders are going to come on up and sing a happy clappy song. These parables were meant to be provocative, for us to sit and look and read and go, who am I in this story? Who am I most like? And sometimes we find ourselves like a whole bunch of people in the story, right? But really, the story is calling us to be like Christ. Not self-interest or self-promoting, but other focus. Not an excuse maker, but a worker. Even the outcasts need God. And so you got to ask yourself, who are you in this story? And then finally ask, begin spending time with people not like you. Listen to them. Learn from them. Love up on them. Not judge them. Not debate them. But to understand. Right? That can lead, they look different than you. They have a different level of education. They're a Democrat, you're a Republican. You're a Republican, they're a Democrat. Right? I'm saying this because we're about to get into election season. I know what you guys got up to in election season. I see your Facebook post. You guys are crazy. I'm a registered independent. I stay there. Okay? And that means I have to listen. I have to learn. And I got to love up on people who don't think and act like me. That's the world I live in. That's the world Christ lived in. That's the world he calls you to live in. And so here's some walkaways for you this week. Don't hesitate on this. The invitation's out there. Don't wait. The time is now. The kingdom is upon us. It's not something in the future. It's now. And it's inviting us to this lifestyle. And though it's not easy, it's really rewarding. And though we may feel like we're always pouring out, remember, how much we pour out, our Father will pour back into us. And I hope that God blesses you. Take care.